Okay. All right. Let me know once you see it go live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Career Lab Wednesday. Welcome, welcome. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller. Thank you, Jane. Excellent. So we are up and rolling here, and I am excited to be with you today as we are going to talk some about emotions in the workplace. And this is I don't know, this is my special sauce. This is what I really enjoy doing, is helping people understand how to use their feelings as incredibly important data in the workplace. And so I'll talk some about this, but before I dig further into that, I want to let everybody know the ways that you can participate. Now, I love it when you jump in directly on the Zoom link. That's great. I can talk with you one-on-one if you're open to that, if you'd like to. That's great. And if you can't jump in directly on this link, you can always be viewing in through YouTube or LinkedIn. And if you have questions, type your questions into the comment section. Go ahead and type any questions that you have about career into the comment section. Welcome, Jody. Good to have you. And so you're welcome to ask any questions career related, can be anything from resume questions, interview questions, or more of the social and emotional intelligence stuff about how to interact with your team, how to interact with your boss, etc. So any career related questions are on the table. And the way that you can do that again is you can jump in directly here on Zoom. I can talk with you one-to-one here. And if you can't do that, you can type your questions into the comment section. Jane will get those over to me, and I'll do my best to answer those. And if you're joining in for your first time, you are welcome to also type your questions into the chat section. If you want to remain anonymous, that's just fine. Totally fine, understandable. So, as we're launching here, I will remind everybody of how you can participate in a little bit. I'll do that again. But I want to get into our topic of emotional intelligence in the workplace. So saying emotions work at work. If you think about it, we have a history of believing that we need to keep our emotions under control. We need to suppress them. There's something, if we could just not have to deal with them, that would probably be better. And that was a very common theme for, I think, humanity for a long time. Then in the 2000s, more and more research started emerging about how important emotions are to our decision-making process. Hello, Tiffany. Good to have you here. And how our emotions really help us have not only more success in our career, but a richer life overall. And so we have tended to look at them as kind of a pesky thing that we have to learn how to deal with. And what I like to do is to offer the reframe of, my goodness, they are the key to success in not only personal life, but in career, and add to a really fulfilling life. So I'll share a little bit about some ways that clients have used getting to know themselves and their emotions better to great effect in their positions at work. And a reminder to everybody, you're welcome to type any questions. Could be about your resume, could be about interviewing, could be about what do I want to do next in my career. Any stuff is on the table career related. You can type those into the chat. So I was working with a woman yesterday, and what she was realizing about her feeling angry at work was that in the past, she would be aggressive and just driven and just get things done, get results. but that over time she saw that that would have people kind of resent her. And so, and she also came to see, oh, you know what? When I do that too, there's a lot of data out in the world, and there's a lot of things that I don't always know the answer to. And so I very well may be wrong. And so she, went through a process of kind of putting the brakes on aggression and anger and really focusing on um, just kind of following instructions and doing what needs to be done. However, she's now at a point where she has to re-engage this emotion of anger. In order for the company to get the results that they need to get, they need somebody in her position to tell the truth about some things. And that requires some level of aggression. So oftentimes when we, think about feeling angry, expressing anger, we kind of can overblow that. When I'm talking about using aggression and anger, I mean that just in terms of it. If I'm gonna cross the street, I have to harness a little bit of anger to cross the street. Anger is all emotions are happening in us all the time. And so if I can be aware of that, I can use it in an effective way. So she had just kind of turned off access to her anger because it had, kind of run its course in the past. Now she is learning to re-engage her anger in a fine-tuned, effective way. And a key way to do this is to notice what you're feeling hurt about and what you're feeling afraid about. Because anytime I'm feeling any level of anger, you could say irritation, if I'm feeling irritated or anxious about something, then to notice, oh my goodness, I feel kind of hurt because I'm already anticipating that people aren't going to understand me and that this idea is going to be rejected. I'm already anticipating failure. So there's already a feeling of pain there. And then right underneath that, there's always going to be fear. There's going to be that anxiety, that fear of rejection, the fear that I'm not going to be able to communicate this well enough, some kind of fear like that. So knowing that then gives me more leverage with my anger because I can say things to other people then like, I'm concerned that if we don't address this problem head on that we've been kind of sidestepping in our company for years, that if we don't really take this on, it's going to limit us and perhaps lead to the end of this company. Whoa. So right there, you see how different that is from you're doing this wrong, do it this way, where it's just kind of the anger. But if I can communicate my concerns and if I can lead with a little bit of vulnerability, it can go a long way in relationships at work. So, how I am aware of myself and what my concerns really are is a huge factor in how I'm able to communicate that clearly to others. So I think of emotional intelligence as the ABCs that we never learned. And at any point in anybody's life, anybody's career, you can pick this up and start using it. So I think it's incredibly important. So it's so powerful to make that switch in my head of, oh my gosh, I can start paying attention to my emotions as really valuable data that are going to give me intuition and help me connect with people that's going to actually affect change. Because telling others what to do is only going to work to a certain extent. And if you are doing anything in sales, if sales is part of your job, relationship, I think this is all kind of buzzwords for people now, but you know that building relationships is key. And if I'm going to be able to have a meaningful relationship with other people, it's going to start with me really having a meaningful relationship with myself. And the hack to this, the shortcut, is to really be aware of my fear, my hurt, my anger, my sadness, and my joy. Now, I know we've got one person on here who is familiar with this, who has done some programs with the organization that I have worked with for years. And we have whole quarters in graduate school programs that dig into the five feelings: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy, and the importance of knowing that and expressing that with other people in a responsible way. So that's I can share some more about that, but I want to, as we're coming up on a quarter of the hour here, I want to invite questions. Any questions that you have about today's topic of emotions and how they work in the workplace, or anything about resumes or interviews or your job search. Any questions that you have career related are welcome. You can come off mute and ask them live here, or you can type into the chat. And if you are viewing in through YouTube or LinkedIn, go ahead and type your questions into the comment section there, and Jane will get those over to me, and I will be able to answer you that way. So again, all questions are welcome. So as we're going into the new year, I'm excited to share that I am launching my coaching business. And that is something that I've kind of been building towards for a while now, but it really makes sense for me to do it at the start of this year. And there are some programs that I have been leading for years where we have group coaching provided with one-to-one coaching, where we have a curriculum in emotional intelligence. So one of the first assignments that people get, one of the first lessons that we dig into, is this on fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy. And people get to experience expressing that with other people in this group environment where everybody has agreed that, you know, this is the game that we're playing, that we're going to take risks of really saying what we're thinking and feeling to each other in a much more direct way than we are currently used to doing in society. And it's kind of like going to, I think of it as the emotional intelligence gym. So if I want to be able to run a marathon, there's going to be stretches and little drills that I do on my own, and sometimes that I do with other people that get my joints and my body ready to do the bigger thing. And so that's how these groups are. In these groups, you're working with people who have the same agenda as you, of being more in touch with their feelings so that they can be more effective in the workplace and in their relationships at home or with friends. And so in these groups, you get to stretch into a place that is a little uncomfortable, but you get to do it in an environment where you know it's okay. So one of the things that we'll practice is simply, you know, if somebody is feeling afraid or hurt by something somebody else said, they'll just say that. Like, I feel hurt that I wasn't acknowledged for this thing that I did. And notice that. So as you're listening in, part of what I want you to be doing is to be applying everything I'm saying to you. So picture somebody, somebody that you work with or somebody in your life, and saying to them, I feel hurt that I wasn't acknowledged for this thing that I did. And just notice the fear, the discomfort that comes up in your body when you picture yourself doing that. Well, that kind of exercise, when you're doing that one-on-one with a coach and in a small group setting, as you hear other people having those interactions, and as you're practicing that kind of thing, then when you are in the real world or in your job or whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to have a heightened level of consciousness around yourself, your feelings, and other people. So you may not say exactly some of the things that you practice in the class, but you'll be aware of it in a way that you weren't before because you have the practice. It's not just the thought. You didn't just read a book about it. You actually did it. You had the experience of trying out a new form of behavior, a new form of communication with other people. And so then when you're in the work meeting, even if you don't say that, you're aware of it. You're aware of the dynamics of the group that you're in a way that you wouldn't have been before. So one person I was working with shared about how as she was in some of these classes, she started to become aware how at work everybody on her team was feeling hurt by how her boss never acknowledged them for the work that they were doing. And so they cared about the company. They put in hours and, are doing their best. And things, it was, the company was in a challenging place in the market. So lots of challenges. Just that's part of the environment. And so they're doing this work and people keep leaving. And she is, she is sharing this stuff and her people are leaving and the boss says, "What's going on? Why do people keep leaving?" And my client had at this point now noticed this in the system, how hurt everybody was feeling, how unacknowledged everybody was feeling. And so she had been able to kind of stay on and not just leave reactively because she realized that she was feeling hurt. Before these courses, she wouldn't have even known. She would have just completely blamed the boss and said, "Oh, and everything's screwed and it's all a mess." And she wouldn't have gotten any valuable data from it. She wouldn't have really seen what was happening. But now she did. And she was able to stay in longer and not make a reactive decision. She was able to make a more conscious decision about her next steps. And she realized things like, oh my gosh, I am so needed here. There's no way I'm going to get fired. Because again, we often have fears that if we pay attention to the fears and test them out and get some other perspectives on it, she was able to start seeing like, wait a minute, I have a lot more leverage here and I can take some risks and say some things here that aren't going to get me fired because, quite frankly, they need me too much. And so now she starts to, instead, where before she would have indicted herself for feeling afraid because she was unconscious of it, and she would have said internally, this whole program running unconsciously, she would have said, "Oh, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with this place." And it's just this kind of wash of feelings that aren't helpful. But she was able to recognize it and say, oh my goodness, no, I'm afraid And there's a lot of good things to be afraid about here. Yes, we are. This is really challenging here, but my fear isn't actually, doesn't need to be about me being fired. There's pretty much no way I'm going to get fired or, short of being atrocious. So then she now sees the system, sees what's going on, and has developed herself. She has become more confident, and she hasn't necessarily said a single thing differently than she would have before. She's experiencing things differently for sure. And she is experiencing more confidence in herself. As then she says to her boss, look, what's one of the things going on is that everybody is not acknowledged. Like it's really painful to put in a lot of work and then not get any feedback and just to kind of have the sense of like, geez, I'm totally a waste of space here. Even like, no, don't do that. That was a bad approach. Way to go for it, but that approach really didn't work. Why don't you try this? Like that would be helpful, but nobody's getting any of that stuff. And so her boss said, look, thank you so much. Please don't go yet. Please stay and work with me on this. And so then her boss was checking in with her. How did I do? How did I do with acknowledging people? Because it was a totally blind spot for this person. They didn't know. I mean, in personality types, everybody has different personality types. Some people really don't care about it's just getting the results. So to them, it was sort of like, yeah, why is everybody leaving? And it took the pain of people actually leaving and the woman I'm talking about to say directly, look, this is what's going on. So now through this process of knowing her emotions, knowing her fear, hurt, and anger primarily, feeling that, allowing herself to feel the discomfort of those feelings in her body, that gave her insights into how the system was working and then into how to communicate effectively with her boss in a way that she felt good about herself, even if her boss had said, you're totally out of line, you're fired. She, yeah, her feelings would have been hurt, but she would have said, you know what? I know in my heart I did the right thing. Right there. That's what we're talking about, is for people to get the map of themselves, of their unconscious and of their feelings, so that they know in their heart that they're doing what they want to do, that they're doing the right thing by them. And that's a skill. A lot of people can go through life and never really have a good sense of that. Common deathbed regret, if you've probably heard me say this before, is that people don't, people regret that they haven't shared what they were really feeling, that their friends and loved ones didn't really know how they felt about stuff, that they weren't really known. And so, looping back to the beginning of this, it's so important to know thyself. That will help you know the world. So, fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. This is like the building blocks of being a human. And there's so much to learn and dig into in these core feelings. And I think in part because I don't think humans did, like for whatever reason in evolutionary space, I don't think we spent a lot of time in getting to know ourselves at a greater depth. So, oh, wonderful. Yes. Oh, cool. I'm just seeing something in the chat here. Yes. So I am launching my business. And again, I'll say that there's a couple programs that will be available beginning next year. And in fact, we can throw a link to one of those. This is the Foundations of EQ Lab. This is something that if you want to learn more about emotional intelligence and have a small group of people to work with. I'm capping it at 8 people. So I like a small group to work with. And In that group, you will get practice. You'll get educational material, stuff that you can learn on your own time and ask questions about in class. But then you'll also get to practice with each other. And that's one of the most important parts. That's like, if you think about how you're going to spend your time on something, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and YouTube and things like when I'm driving, when I'm walking my dog, and I like taking in information. I'm a huge auditory learner. When I'm preparing for a presentation, I listen to it. I record myself and listen to myself back. So that's how I kind of digest information, and I put out information in that way for you to learn. Then for time that you're spending on a screen in front of a computer, which I don't necessarily love doing, so I kind of limit my time in how I'm doing that. And I want to make sure I'm getting, a lot of return on investment there. That time then is a 2 hour time with this class, The Foundations of EQ. And so it'll be intensive learning. You'll get so much out of it that you will be able to apply in all kinds of places in your life. So check it out. Also, if you have questions about it and you don't want to be asking questions here, totally fine. I get it. You can book a 15-minute time with me on my calendar. So I'll throw that link in there as well. I'm happy to talk with you about these programs. Or if you don't want to talk about them and you just want straight coaching for 15 minutes, I will serve you as much as I can in that time. If you've got career-related questions, let me know. I love helping people with this stuff. Oftentimes, I'm able to kind of affirm. Usually what happens is that you've got a direction you want to go, and you kind of just need some affirmation around it, and somebody with, experience in helping you sort that through. So that's often what I do, and sometimes a quick call can help get you going in a direction that you want to go. And if we need more time than 15 minutes, then we'll talk about setting up a coaching relationship. So that is taking us to halfway through the hour. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I am your host, George Miller. I'm here with you almost every week, almost every Wednesday of the year from noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. There's a few ways that you can participate. Now, I love it when you jump in directly on Zoom and I can work with you one-to-one here. And if you can't do that, you can always type your questions into the comment section. So go ahead and let me know if you have any questions today. Any questions about the topic of emotional intelligence in the workplace, or any questions that you have regarding your career. There's no question too small, no question too big. Um, as you're thinking about what you want to share, I want to check in with somebody here and see if I can get you. Tiffany, are you able to? I haven't heard from you in a little bit. I would love to get an update of what you're doing and any way that I can support you these days. So if you're able to, I know you may not be able to, but if you can, what's going on?
Oh, hello. Yes.
Hey, hey,
Hi.
your voice.
Thank you. Yes, I've been tuning in maybe in different ways, like on the LinkedIn and YouTube. Um, but as far as me, I'm recently unemployed, so um, haven't really gone into the applying part yet. Just still just trying to process and see what direction I may want to go from now on, and trying to take in some learns from my previous jobs and evaluating, what's important to me now, and how, and getting a game plan is, where I want to go and how I can approach that to be more effective than just, just going looking for whatever job I can get. So that's where I'm at now. And one of the things I'm
Oh,
wondering too is like when I get into interviews, since a lot of my
oop, I lost you. When you get into interviews, Tiffany, I think my guess is you hit the mute button by accident.
fast or whatever gaps may be.
So wait, I missed that, Tiffany. So when you get into interviews, what?
How to present in a positive way why I might have been in the job for just between 1 or 2 years.
Oh, well, what happened?
Such things like, according to them, like my contract not being renewed, but not having, whatever real reason, but mostly that's what the reason is given to me.
What do you know? It can be really helpful to know the context of why you were let go. Like, was your school testing out your position? You know, what can you tell me about that so far?
Um, I really don't know. So um, because I even asked them the reason, they just said my contract wasn't renewed.
Do you know if other people's contracts were renewed?
Probably yes.
Probably, so you know that they were?
Well, as far as I know, because it was like 2 weeks ago when I was let go. So as far as I know, I was the only person.
Okay, so Tiffany, this is a recent thing. Did you know this was coming?
No, I didn't. I didn't even know the contract was ending. So, but then I looked back and saw that it did say something about the 31st of December. So that was kind of, I don't know how I missed that, but um, I guess I just assumed it would be renewed, whatever the case may be.
Okay. Well, why do you think that your contract wasn't renewed?
Oh wow. Um, I mean, it's not totally a surprise. Um, I don't want to go into too much personal things, but there were some conflicts and tension within the last year with um, me trying to work things out with my boss and other co-workers and been working on things. So um, guess I didn't meet the expectations that they were looking for.
Okay. So my assumption, and this is great. Thank you for sharing this. I think that this is a really important conversation to have and thing to look at. Um, when going into a position, oftentimes the expectations are not communicated clearly. Um, and you may not have been a great fit for it. And so for you to, and I think that's one thing that's pretty common and increasingly common is that there's more and more contract work because organizations know more and more that they perhaps don't know how to hire. They might not even know really, they know they need help, but they might not even know what kind of help they need. And so bringing on a full-time employee is very expensive for organizations, and there's more and more contract work. The number of people in the past 2 years that I've worked with who started their own consulting practice as a way to have an income and to be able to uh, get a foot in the door at companies that they're interested in is huge. A lot of people have been doing that. And then it can come to a point where a company says, okay, we like the work that we're doing together. Here's we kind of can't picture not working with you. We'd like to make you an offer. So that is, I think, increasingly common. And so it might be helpful for you to look at the larger context this way. And it's you're gonna, of course, your feelings are gonna be hurt,
Mhm.
that absolutely. And you're gonna be mourning that loss. Um, and as you're doing that, it can give you more clarity about who you are, what your gifts are, what your skill sets are, and if there's things that you want to learn and things that you may be like, you know what, in that position and what was expected of me there, that's not actually something I'm interested in doing. And, you know, you could even look at it as a gift of glad it wasn't a full-time position where I was going to be locked into this thing and it was going to be messier than this. Okay, so I got to try this out this way. I got some experience from it. It helped me take the next step. And I don't want to be callous as I'm talking about it because I know that it's like there's a lot of feelings that come along with this. But as you're doing that, looking at it from this lens may help you get to a level of confidence when you're interviewing with other people where you can say, you know, at this place, it wasn't a great fit. I was trying out this thing, and um, that helped me see that actually what I want to be doing is more of this. And as I understand it, that's what this company or this organization needs. That's why you have this open position here. Now, Tiffany, how does that sound to you? Kind of how I laid that out.
Yeah, I'm following along. I can see how that can um, come into play. And it's interesting you use the word fit, even though I didn't mention that a while ago, but I think that's one of the reasons too, was just didn't fit in with the culture. And it wasn't really about my job performance so much, but just that fit more
Oh,
subjectively.
okay. So there was a cultural issue at hand as well. And in
The,
fact, that was the main thing.
the work culture, yeah, the overall.
So
Yeah.
that then gives you a lot of um th- if you're able to put it that way and have confidence about that when you're interviewing and to say, oh, I was under contract for this and when my time came up, I didn't continue it. And if you put yourself in the place of authorship, um, how does that feel to you, Tiffany?
Um, but really, it wasn't my choice to leave, but seemed like I wasn't given that choice. So that's how would I um put that? Like, like why did you leave? But but I can also see what you were saying too a while ago that maybe that's showing me some things that wasn't, the right for me. Uh, so yeah, that's just something to think about. Just how to put it.
So, you know, if I went into a position where I thought I was really going to love the job and the culture and things, and then I get in there and I realize that the expectations were not communicated to me clearly, and to take full responsibility for it, that means that there were questions I didn't ask.
Okay.
That means that when I was in the interview process, there were things that I didn't know to investigate. So now you have more information. You're one up from yourself where you were before that your last position, because you now know, oh, there were things that I did not know about and that I did not investigate while I was interviewing for this position. So that gives you more leverage now when you're interviewing. And this is the come from that I work with everybody, is that when you're interviewing, you are the interviewer. You're interviewing the person interviewing you. You are interviewing the company. You're coming from a place of authorship of your life, your career path. And you want to know if this is a place where you're able to grow and develop your skills. And if it's a spot that, some people in the interview process will find, I could do this job. I've done it before, but I'm not interested in doing this. I'm not interested in helping the company grow in this way. It's not something that's going to have me developing. That's one possible scenario. Or it can be, you know what? This company, um, I don't have enough experience here, and it doesn't look like they have a system that's going to train me and get me here. So I could perhaps oversell myself and I could get the job. It's obvious they need help, but I don't know that they're organized enough in here and have enough of a solid foundation that it's going to be beneficial to me. And I'm afraid I'm just going to kind of flounder here. And I kind of suspect that might be a little bit of what happened with you, Tiffany.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so there you go. So now you're using that fear of, oh no, there's something wrong with me, I'm not enough, and all of the fears that come up in this way in a job environment. But you can start to get better data about that fear. Yeah, there are ways that you're not enough. None of us are. I mean, we're freaking human, like none of us are enough. But then for you to get clear about, okay, where were the ways that I wasn't enough? And also, where were the ways that this company didn't have the system in place to help develop me? How was this too much of a stretch for me? And actually, like, they need help that I don't even understand. And once I start allowing that kind of stuff in, then I can start to use my fear more accurate and say, you know what? These are the things I saw that weren't working at this organization. And when I'm interviewing now, I'm going to be really curious about these items at whatever organization I'm interviewing at. I'm going to find out more about how they handle this stuff. Because right there, then when you're asking those kinds of questions, you're helping who's ever interviewing you think through the job position, the organization. It's a more engaging conversation for them. And if you're in a first round or second round and they don't know the answers to it, they then will automatically put you into the next round interview because they'll be like, oh, she's asking questions that are above my pay grade. I guess that means she goes into the next one. So you really taking ownership of the process and applying yourself that way to the next organizations you're interviewing at, that so that way too you're able to come out of the interviews, even if you don't get the job, like even if you're like, you know what, that's a place I don't want to work, you come out feeling better about yourself, you come out feeling more confident, you come out more excited for the next interview. Okay.
Okay. Another thing I fear is too that sometimes, and from my experience, people may say something about the job and the culture, but once you're in the job, it may be different, or there may be a change of bosses or people in power while you're in the job, so they may have some slightly different ideas than when you came in with.
So this is on you to research as much as you can. Oh, these are great questions. I'm so glad you're asking them. Everybody listening in, like, take this to heart. Because we can do research about so many different things. So kind of knowing how and what to research is important. And now that you have this past experience of the last organization you were with, you now have more focus on what you want to research. So, what ways could you research this beforehand when you're before interviews, when you are looking at companies that you're interested in? What are some of the ways that you could start investigating and getting some answers to these questions?
I'm thinking about looking at reviews, or if I could even talk to some of the people who work there, because I haven't done that much before, because I think I had this idea I just want to see things on my own instead
Uh,
of swayed by others, because they may have had a different experience, but maybe to consider doing that something different.
that that sounds like a really good idea. I have one client who they had a couple options. They got their next job down to two things, and one of them was really exciting and sexy, and like totally, glamorous and looked like where they wanted to go. And they had already kind of decided they're going to do it. And the other one was not nearly as cool looking, but they were like, I think it might be more stable. So what they did was they they told the owner, the CEO, I'd like to talk with one person, beforehand and just get to know before I make my final decision. And the fact that the CEO like didn't want that to happen, and like she just caught it in that moment, like, oh, huh, interesting. It seemed like that really threw him off. And okay, so I am still meeting with this person, but just that little bit there then gave her enough to go back to the other company and say, hey, please keep your offer open one more day. I'm checking something out. And had the meeting with the person and then determined, what, this is that I got too many red flags are starting to pop up here for me. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it seemed like the space that I wanted to go into, but I now I'm going to pay attention to my gut response to these things. And so they ultimately went with what seemed to be the more boring but stable company. In the end, it's totally the right fit because they're getting to develop some really foundational skills in running a company. And anyway, enough
Mhm.
about that. So,
That's a
Tiffany,
good
I
story.
hope that helps.
Oh, yes, it is. Um, so yeah, so you're just asking a lot of questions and research, and maybe more than just one person.
Depending on how big the organization is, look at connect with somebody on LinkedIn. I recommend this to a lot of people when I'll share about one client right now, and this is so important for everybody listening in. Like this is not you're changing your approach to your career is not something that you're going to do overnight. I mean, maybe you will, but most of us don't have, a brilliant flash of insight that completely changes how we view ourselves in the world. Sometimes that happens. It's very rare. So it's probably not going to happen. So, but you can have this happen over time. So I'm going to talk about another client of mine. What For a long time, he was in this space of, I don't like my job. I but I'm not ready to take the next step and go look for other things. Then at a certain point, he got to the space where he's like, you know what? I've experimented with a lot of things here. I've tried to do things differently with my bosses here, and I'm seeing that it's really not going to happen. And this is not going to be the place that I'm going to be able to develop myself. I'm not going to actually be able to make more money here. This place is at a cap. Like at this point, I know I'm wasting my time here. And so then my client started to actually look outward and start the job hunt. And at first, he did very little. I mean, it was if he made 3 phone calls to some of his friends between sessions, like that was progress. And it took him about 2 months to ramp up because, mind you, he has a job and change is always, uncomfortable. So,
Mhm.
Tiffany, you're going to be doing this faster because you don't, you're not resting on laurels. You're not you've got to move faster. But to understand as you're doing this, that it's like your unconscious mind and how you behave sometimes has a little bit of a lag to it. And so he starts reaching out and it took him 2 months to get to the point where he said, "Oh, you know what? I now have a much better sense of what I want in my next job. And I'm looking up companies. I have my top 5 companies that I'm interested in, and I'm starting to research them and see what challenges they're having. And I'm looking on LinkedIn and seeing who works there and messaging people on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I'm interested in your company. I would love to jump on a phone call with you and hear about your experience there." Bam. But that took a little bit of time for him to get to. So Tiffany, I don't know what yours is going to be like, but I'm wanting to say this in a broad sense for everybody listening in, that for you want to get to the point when you're in a job search of really being proactive about it, looking at the companies that you want, reaching out in whatever format you can, to find out more about that company, to do research and really allow yourself to be curious about what's going on in that organization and what their challenges are. And again, to tie it back to today's topic of fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy, and key emotions, paying attention to the feelings that you have in your research. You know, if something seems to be too good, probably is. I just I had a very experienced client recently. I mean, somebody who has hired and fired lots and lots of people and is familiar with this whole process and did a bunch of deep interviews with a company, gets to the company and realizes that the the whole fact that they were joining this company was not communicated to everybody on the team. Oh my gosh, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
They totally didn't see that one coming. So, no matter how much research you do, you probably aren't going to discover everything,
Yeah.
but you got to, it will benefit you to do as much as you can. So, thank you for the questions today. I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing, Tiffany. We got to start wrapping up. We're kind of coming up on the hour here,
All right.
but
Thank you.
you bet. You bet. And let me know, Tiffany, you've got the link where you can set up a time to meet with me. I'd love to talk to you more and support you. And also, I know you might have questions that you don't want to share here on Career Lab Wednesday. Totally get it.
All right.
And that
Thank you.
goes, you bet. You bet, Tiffany. And that goes for everybody who's listening in. I'd love to meet with you and help you as much as I can in 15 minutes. And if that doesn't suffice, we can look at next steps if there's more that you'd like to do in a coaching relationship or in one of the classes that I will be leading in the new year. All right, everybody. This is Career Lab Wednesday, in the space where we look at using your career as a pathway to reach your potential, using your environment, using the challenges to get to know yourself more, to get more in touch with your core emotions, your core self, and to be able to leverage yourself into the world to influence with greater effectiveness. Well, many blessings, everybody. Take care. Uh, Again, I think keep an eye out for my new email as well, Chicago Leadership Coach at Gmail. Deciding to go with Gmail for a bit, see how that goes. And so if you're wanting to contact me, you've got a few ways. You got my calendar and also my new email. All right, everybody, blessings. I'll see you next week.